If I could only figure out how to get my team motivated.
We are never going to get this project done on time.
Oh my God, my payroll numbers are insane. Why are we having all this overtime?
Do you have these or similar employee problems? Do you feel like some of your employees are just there for a paycheck? Tired of recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, and training just to find out you must do it all over again? Then it's time for you to find out how to have outrageously awesome employees. Sit back, buckle up, and get ready because we're about to drop a knowledge bomb on you. Please welcome to the mic the host of the show, the man who puts the human in human resources, the 007 of team building, the emperor of employee engagement, Randy Starr.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of How to Have Outrageously Awesome Employees. Today we have a pretty special guest that I'm going to have to say that everybody's going to want to know, especially if you have kids. Richard Ray Jr. And Richard works for Cedar Fair Entertainment Company, and I'll let him tell you who that is because you may not recognize that name. He's a corporate director, organizational and talent development and talent acquisition. How are you doing this afternoon, Richard?
I am well. How are you today?
I'm great. You have a very long title, which typically means you have a whole lot of stuff to do.
Yes, that would be correct. So I like to say I'm the fun side of HR.
There you go.
So for Cedar Fair Entertainment, I am responsible for the recruiting, onboarding, training, leadership development, and succession planning. So again, that whole life cycle on the fun side. I mean, there's a lot of things in HR that might not be fun but are necessary. But thankfully, I get to live in the world where it's a little bit more fun. So getting individuals into the organization and here at Cedar Fair, I mean, that's what we're all about. Our stock symbol is fun. So our parks, 10 in the U.S., 1 in Canada, bring fun on a seasonal basis. We have one full-time park out at Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, that runs all year round. But we are a seasonally regional amusement park operator.
And tell everybody which parks that you guys run.
Oh gosh, okay. So I'll go from East Coast to West Coast. So we have Carowinds in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have
Been there.
Kings Dominion in Dawswell, Virginia. We have Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm going to jump across the border. Canada's Wonderland is just outside of Toronto. Cedar Point, our flagship in Sandusky, Ohio. Kings Island, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Moving a little further west, the Midwest, Worlds of Fun in Kansas City, Missouri. Valley Fair in Shakopee, Minnesota. Michigan's Adventure is in Muskegon, Michigan. We have, I mentioned earlier, Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, just outside of Anaheim. And California's Great America in Santa Clara, California.
Wow, what a portfolio.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
A lot of fun. Across the U.S., mostly in the north, or what could be considered the north in most cases, but great portfolio of parks.
Well, I've been to 3 of them, Kings Dominion, Kings Island, and Carowinds.
Yep.
All 3 of them are awesome.
Yeah,
of course, I've got kids. You know, you can't drive past something that huge and not, hey, we've got to stop.
Exactly, especially when we put a big sign out there. Kings Dominion's got a huge sign right on 95. You're driving up and boom, there it is. What's that?
And conveniently, there's hotels there too.
Yeah, I mean, we work with the local community to try to make sure that our guests are taken care of, whether they're at our park and our resorts or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's get to the task at hand.
Yes, sir.
And let's start with you. Just tell us about your background, who you've worked for, positions that you've held, that type of thing, so everybody can kind of get to know Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the amusement park, theme park business for over 20 years. So I started way back in the 90s at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. I was a ride operator, so I started that button pushing early on in my career. So I worked up many attractions at the resort, started at Epcot. And with a company that large, you get the opportunity to move around. So every 2 to 2.5 years, I moved to another part of the organization. Even though I stayed in rides a lot of the time, I did move into resorts for a little while. I bounced between Epcot and the Magic Kingdom. I got to meet great individuals, got to open attractions, which was really cool. And then in 2003, I moved into a manager position. So I was a manager in Tomorrowland Attractions, which was amazing. So Space Mountain, Buzz Lightyear, all the gang there. Did that for a couple of years, and my GM, Val Bunting, came to me and said, "Hey, Richard, we'd like you to go to entertainment." And I said, "Well, I can't play an instrument, dance, or walk down Main Street without tripping over the trolley tracks. But if that's something you need, I'm willing to do it." So I moved to the entertainment department at the Magic Kingdom. Was managing our characters and our attendants. I got the opportunity to do some projects and parades at the Magic Kingdom. Now, up until this point, I also had training as many of my responsibilities. So you're a manager, but you wear a lot of different hats. And part of that was either the college program or training in many of those areas. So during my time in entertainment, I then moved into a strictly training role. So I was responsible, as well as many of my peers, for the entertainment training. So I had a group of individuals, performance specialists, that went out there and monitored our characters' performance and our attendance, attention to detail with our guests, as well as the photographers. And then we moved a little bit into the actual training of those different roles. Then I went into a couple of project roles in transportation, so bus operations and watercraft. And then I ended my Disney career, 15 years there, in a project role with the resort recreation team. So again, like I said, Disney, 15 years, lots of opportunity if you're willing to move around and learn as much as you can. From there, I went to SeaWorld Parks Entertainment. I was in their corporate office. I was their corporate training manager of non-revenue generating. Though in the amusement park world, those that know, admissions is one of the largest revenue generating departments. I had admissions. So it was a little play on with us. My peer had merchandise and food and beverage, which are two huge operating revenue generating departments. Left there after 2 years and went to Wyndham Vacation Ownership for a very short period of time. I was their training manager for resorts. So that included maintenance, front desk, and our housekeeping for the North American resorts. So anything from Hawaii to the Caribbean, Canada to Mexico, we assisted that group in various ways. But I only spent 7 months there because this opportunity at Cedar Fair presented itself 4 years ago. And I've been here ever since. It was a new position, which was awesome. So I've kind of laid the foundation. Now I've grown a team. I have 2 individuals that report to me, and we're just plugging along. It's been a lot of great work over the last 4 years.
What a phenomenal, what a great place to, all those places are great to work. All of them.
Yeah, it's a fun story to tell. Sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah.
They don't want to move on to the next job. They're like, wait a minute, tell me more about this.
Well, I had to restrain myself because I kind of had the feeling this is going to go on. And if I ask questions about everything, we'll never get off this first question. But that's tremendous. I mean, I have met people. I worked for Marriott for many years, and I met people that had worked for Mr. Marriott himself for a very long period of time. I had an employee that worked at one of my hotels that I was responsible for, whose uncle was Mr. Marriott Sr.'s chauffeur.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very, very close to Mr. Marriott, and worked for him and his wife for 30, 40 years, some ridiculous amount of time. And what a super fun job. But man, I always thought that would have been the best job, but now I'm starting to wonder because you go to a place where everybody's happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
and it's interesting you bring up Marriott. I mean, our park, California's Great America, out in Santa Clara was built by the Marriott Corporation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was originally built back in the 70s, and then they built a sister park, which is a Six Flags owned park now, I believe just outside of Chicago. With this, it's called Six Flags Great America. We have California's Great America, very similarly designed parks, but Marriott built those parks.
Wow. See, now there's something I didn't even know. Marriott does a little bit of everything, but great. So my next question is about what you found the most interesting about human resources, and obviously training is your forte. So what is it about the training piece in HR that you found so interesting that keeps you working in that field?
Yeah, it's interesting, just the dynamics. Like when I graduated high school and started working for Disney, I didn't plan on working for Disney either as an operator. I was in the medical train of thought. I had scholarships for medical, and then got in a car accident, and my mom worked at Disney, and that's how I started working at Disney. So the way I've kind of internalized it is when I was in the medical side of things, I was there to help people. And when I moved into the operations at Disney and started to grow up, I continued saying, okay, how can I help people? And it's just in a different way. And that's really what human resources is really about. It's helping individuals throughout their career and throughout their business. Sometimes we have to be reminded of the human aspect of human resources, and you have those conversations from time to time. But that's what keeps me going in this industry is I'm helping other individuals, and whether it's through large conversations in conferences or in trainings or one-on-one, there's something that someone's going to get out of it. And if they take that little nugget, whether they attribute it to the conversation we had or to the feedback I provided, that doesn't interest me in the least, because it's about them getting better at what they're looking to get better at. And that's why I keep coming back into this human resources area, even though I grew up from the training side of things. OD, I have a master's in education, but I also have a master's degree in organizational development. And so it's that coaching and that movement of people and retaining people, and how do you attract more people. So even the recruiting side, I'm getting more well-versed in from a human resources standpoint.
That's, the helping part. I think almost everybody that I've interviewed now that's a HR professional, that's come up. It's like I think one of the very first people that I interviewed for this process, and I'm doing these throughout the entire year, 2018, she was a teacher. She was going to be a teacher. So she wanted to help teach and learn. So she just kind of got sidetracked at one point in her career, and now she teaches and helps people learn in the hotel that she works at, or the organization that she works for. So yeah, very good. Tell us a story that you would consider to be your greatest accomplishment so far in any of the roles that you've played.
Yeah, I mean, coming to Cedar Fair, where this position did not exist before, and being able to lay the foundation, I know that's probably a very broad accomplishment. But when I look back, and I've had 2 leaders now within this role, and I'm a very reflective person. I try to look back at every quarter at the things that I've accomplished, because I think as humans, we forget that we're always on to that next thing. We're always looking ahead. How can I get past the next finish line? That you don't look at all the accomplishments that got you to that place. And I would say even over the last year, it was a huge year for us. We were responsible for looking at our employment brand. We were responsible for developing a brand new career site. We were instrumental in launching a new applicant tracking system within a very short period of time. And we did that over the course of 9 months. And that is a huge accomplishment. But that added to other accomplishments within the organization on evaluating our application period, evaluating our interview process, where we interview a lot of seasonal hires. I mean, we have over 40,000 hires we make every year. And that's as a seasonal, because those people go away. And then we started all over again. So we looked at making our interviewing more efficient. So we do behavioral group interviews, and we bring in individuals, and for 30 minutes, we are able to interview 10 people at a time because they're interacting with one another. And then also our relationship with Bowling Green State University. Like I mentioned, Cedar Point is our flagship. Bowling Green is just outside. We work with them on a leadership development program for that entry-level supervisor, so that 18-year-old, 19-year-old who we're giving the keys to a food and beverage operation, or let's say the safety of 5 different ride attractions, or a marketing position, or any one of our positions. That's a lot of responsibility for someone that young, and we're doing that. They're gaining a great deal of experience before they're even jumping into the real world, whatever their career happens to take them. We want them to be prepared. We want them to understand about getting to know their associates, and communication and coaching and feedback, and what the guest experience looks like. So Bowling Green and Cedar Fair entered into agreement. We're working together on a couple of other things from a school of theme park management, which was announced earlier this year. And it's going to be in Sandusky, which is great for the local businesses as well as our theme park. But we're really accomplished a great deal with not only them, but over the last 4 years. So when I had a feling this question was coming up, it was going to be hard for me to answer it because we've just done so much in a short period of time.
But that is a lot. And 40,000 hires.
Yeah.
Every year.
Every year, yeah. We have one year-round park. So like I said, our Knott's Berry Farm, they're hiring individuals. They don't hire necessarily, let's say, as many seasonal, but they still hire quite a few seasonal. If you think of the different themes of our season, our water park opens. It's not open year-round, so we bring in new lifeguards and new merchandise and foods folks. We do a big Halloween season at all of our parks, except for Michigan's Adventure. So it's bringing in a lot of different entertainment type folks. And then some of our parks will do a Winterfest offering. So now many of those folks that started maybe in the spring will continue their journey, but we at some point generally let them go because it's a seasonal park, because they're going to close. And when they close, there's nothing for them to do. So yeah, about 40,000 right now is where we're at throughout the given year, and then they all go away, and we do our best to retain them and keep them engaged over the off season, so that our return rate is in a stable area. Would we like to get better? Obviously, yeah, but in an economy this great, right now, the economy is really good when you're looking at from an unemployment rate. It's really hard for us to continue to say, hey, come work at our park. So we're looking at new and innovative ways to try to retain who we have, but also engage new folks.
So, my next question is, I wanted to ask how you, or what you did to help your employees grow. Mm-hmm. But before that, preface that with and let's take the seasonal folks. This is going to be more interesting. So how long are the seasonal folks there? And during that period of time, what do you do to help them grow in any way, shape, or form, personally, professionally, whatever?
Yeah. So the seasonal folks, it depends on their availability. We are a very young workforce. So if we're hiring high school students, they're available during the time in which their summer starts. We do have labor laws in all of our states that prohibit certain hours of operation from a work standpoint on weekends or on school nights. So we work through that. And then the college kids, we get a lot of college kids that will come and work for our parks, and it based on their seasonality as well. So when does their semester of work for the summer end? And then we will typically get individuals for the bulk of our summer, which is generally around 12 weeks. And it can fluctuate. We can go 14, 15 weeks, and we could go from March to December. Just depends on their availability if they're working for us and they don't have school or other obligations. And so what we've tried to do in positioning ourselves from as an employer is a skills for life. And you may start as that, let's say, junior in high school. So let's say you're 16, 17 years old. And we try to position ourselves against like employers. So if you think of what we do from a hospitality standpoint, we're positioning ourselves against food and beverage, which is very easy to understand, like the McDonald's, the Chili's, all of those different areas. You're positioning yourself against retail. So your Dick's Sporting Goods, your malls, and also other entertainment centers. So bowling alleys, movie theaters, things of that nature. So positioning ourselves differently than those groups, because if I'm asking you to drive, let's say 20 miles to one of our parks, you're passing several of those different opportunities along the way. So how do I get your attention to say coming to any one of our parks is going to be a meaningful journey for you as an individual? And it's positioning ourselves for that skills for life. In a very short period of time, we're going to give you the exposure to a lot of different things, between on-the-job training. We do young professionals clubs at some of our parks where we're bringing in leaders, not only from the park. So if you think of like a 16, 17, 18-year-old who's trying to figure out what they want to do in life, and they go to this young professionals meeting and they're meeting the general manager and getting an hour of their time to ask them questions. Or if I'm traveling to a park, I might be invited to speak at the Young Professionals Club and tell them my journey through where I've been, but also how I got engaged in human resources. And so, and we do that a lot. Marketing will do it. I know our chief marketing officer has been at Cedar Point at their Young Professionals Club. Where are you going to get a chief marketing officer to spend an hour with you? I mean, that, and they're going to be answering your questions.
Right.
So, in positioning ourselves as that skills for life, I may be able to take you on a journey as a 16-year-old that says, if you come back next year, you're going to be now that person that can groom the new folks. And then maybe as an 18-year-old, you're an entry-level supervisor at that lead level. And then I'm going to give you additional leadership responsibilities. And then maybe at 19, you become that area supervisor. You're not getting that at some of the other places. You may still be working the ticket counter. You might still be working the window. And we may be handing you the keys to the safe for like $1 million food operation at 19. Because we trust these individuals. We've been able to groom them for 3 or 4 years. And we know that they can hold the responsibility. Because even though our window from an employment standpoint is very condensed, it's also condensed from a guest standpoint. We create a sense of urgency for our guests to come to our parks, whether it's operating new rides, it's new shows, it's new offerings every year. So guests come to our park, a lot of guests. And so they're dealing not only with the constraint as an employee within a very short window of operating. So they know that they're working flexible hours, but they're meeting almost every day, 20,000 new people at some of those parks on a given day. And we know how much technology is been included into our worlds, not just the Gen Z and the millennials. And that's where we're trying to say, okay, here's how we can help them when they grow to their next level. And whether it's the use of technology, whether it's the communication, interpersonal skills, all of those things wrapped into one. Now, I know I've kind of talked about skills for life, but we also need those individuals that maybe they're a teacher and they're off during the summer and they come and work for us during the summer to support those individuals. We have a military program that we bring in individuals because we do have full-time positions in our maintenance department. And so it's balancing all of those things and trying to figure out how to make the biggest impact, not only from a guest experience standpoint, but for these individuals that entrust us with their employment for a very short period of time to want them to keep coming back.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. I mean, compare going to work for you at a park at 16 or 17 years old to going to work at, let's say, Chili's. What are they going to do at Chili's? They're going to be a busboy or wash dishes or do something in the kitchen. Possibly they might be a server.
Yep.
But fast forward both of those occupations 3-4 years, they're probably still in the same position if they're still at the place.
Yeah. And we have the luxury of being a big organization. Even our parks are kind of like little cities where we have a lot of different things to offer them, where as let's say as that 16-year-old, there's only certain positions you can do. I mean, there's some limitations, like you can't run some of the attractions. You may not be able to go into a freezer from a food and beverage standpoint, but there's opportunities where maybe you start as a park services associate, and then the next year you come back and you move to games, or you move into food, or something that might be a little different, but you've already worked for us, so you already have an understanding of who we are.
Right. I like that. Skills for life.
Yeah.
I like it.
Skills for life.
That's good stuff. Very good stuff. Can you tell us about a time when you've helped an employee, a specific employee or situation, help them overcome a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier our Bowling Green relationship with our leadership program. And it's interesting because I helped roll that out for the organization when I was kind of the one-man operation for a little while before I got my team. And for me, it helped also go out into the parks and connect the dots with the supervisors. But what we do is we train operation managers and directors to facilitate the class. It logistically, and there might be one or two facilitators from HR that facilitate the leadership program, but the purpose around that is to make sure that these individuals who are attending these sessions are speaking to individuals that speak the same language. And if I have a food and beverage person in the leadership fundamentals class, and they only hear from HR folks, they may not be able to relate the same experiences. But if I have the director of food and beverage that's facilitating one of their classes, they now know, okay, not only does that individual know my class and what I'm going through, but they're going to be able to answer some of my questions. Now, with that, one of the things that we do is a facilitator train the trainer. And so I created a facilitator train the trainer to get these individuals, those operations managers and directors, to a proficiency level to be able to facilitate a class, because facilitation is different than training. And so many individuals can say, okay, here's the repetitive motion, all those things that you need to do, whether it's with the fryer, whether it's with the ride, whether it's folding clothes, but facilitating a class and transferring that knowledge from one individual to another and allowing them to experience that growth is different. And so I recently, because I now have a training and development manager, I've now handed the reins over to that program to her. But to answer your question, that's one of the most immediate. Earlier this year in February, we did a train the trainer class, and I had individuals from all the parks, and many of them were like, I kind of volunteered, but I was also kind of voluntold. And you always are, and you always worry, and you're like, I'm hoping that you want to experience this because you want to not only develop yourselves, but develop others. Right. And so you have a lot of nervous people, because I tell them at the beginning, I was like, I'm going to videotape you. We're all going to provide you feedback. And then I'm going to be the bad guy, and I'm going to provide you the real feedback, because everyone's like, oh, you did a great job. Everything was great. And then I've got, you didn't make eye contact. You fiddled with the pen too much, or whatever that looks like. And I would say there are a couple individuals this year that probably were like, okay, I'm really worried. And you could see it on their face, because their face turned red when they got up there, and they started to sweat. And I'm just like, hey, it's going to be easy. These people are looking to you. They don't know what you're supposed to tell them. And I would say recently that that overcoming the challenge of being videotaped and being reviewed and kind of picked apart a little bit. But when they do their second facilitation, when I videotape it, I'm like, I delete these after providing you feedback. I'm going to provide you very detailed response to everything that I saw, but then I delete it. These videos are for you. They're not going to go anywhere. So if they end up on YouTube, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And so I tell them that's your growth. And to see the growth in those individuals from their first video to their second video while I'm picking it apart to get some feedback nuggets, is amazing. And that's the part you're like, I don't get a lot of those opportunities at the role I am right now. But when I visit parks and I have those conversations, and they're like, oh man, you should have saw the class I was in. It was great. I used this technique. And it's like, boom, that's my job. That you're doing what you do, and I played a small part, but you owned it. And that's what I think sometimes is hard for individuals at a certain level, is giving it to them and letting them own it. And in
Right.
doing that, they grow so much faster. They grow in different ways that you may not even imagine. And that's the fun part when I get the opportunity to go to the parks and have those conversations. That's
awesome. It's getting down in the trenches, if you will.
Yeah.
Wandering around. I used to wander. They said I managed by wandering around.
I do that too. I probably end up in places I'm not supposed to be. There's probably a sign I missed, but I end up somewhere and I'm just like, all right, how can I help? And they're like, what are you doing here? You're not even supposed to.
Who are you and why are you here?
Yeah, why are you here? I was at Knott's Berry Farm a couple of weeks ago. I went to a conference in Pasadena, and I was like, I have red eye. I'm going to go spend some time in the park. We're opening a new coaster out there, a new dive coaster, and I'm an old rides guy, so I'm very in tune to the just how they're designed and all this other stuff. And someone recognized me from one of those classes, and they said, hey, you want to come up? Absolutely. And now I'm in the control panel room talking to a maintenance guy. And then the marketing person walks by and goes, how did you get up here? I was like, I don't know. I just ended up here. I don't know. They invite me. I'm more than happy to agree to that. And now I'm watching this guy doing transfer tables. So this is great.
That's crazy. But that's how you build relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's exactly how you do it. Okay, we've talked a lot about training. What type of training do you feel is the most important for your employees? And for right now at Cedar Fair, what do you think is the most important for those folks?
Because we have so many new folks, so like I said, we hire so many individuals, I think it's really making the on-the-job training as engaging as possible. Because there's a couple reasons. One, from a trainer perspective, if you're just doing classroom PowerPoint, it gets so monotonous that you become bored, but these individuals are looking to you because they're going to have to go out and do that job. Secondly, from the employee standpoint, we just told them how much fun they're going to have working at our parks. To have a training that's not engaging, that doesn't provide them opportunity to play or test or role play in any way, I think we do a disservice to them. Where if they're just sitting in a classroom and I'm trying to tell them about how much fun they're going to have operating a ride, or how much fun they're going to have at a merchandise location, or a Dippin' Dots cart, and I can't make that fun, that is a disservice. And I think that right now is the most important, because like I mentioned earlier, the skills for life, if we can't get the beginning part right, how are we going to stay true to that message of skills for life? I can't get the right out of the gate training part right. How am I going to get anything else right? And so right now, because of the number of people that we just bring in, that I feel is the most important. Now, of course, you want to layer on leadership and additional types of training that are out there that will continue to enhance them, even beyond when they leave us, because they're going to leave us. We know that there's a cliff and they're going to go away. But that doesn't mean that we're not setting them up to be better citizens for tomorrow. And again, I think it's so important to get that first part right in our business, and then we start to layer on those other trainings.
That's great. That is awesome. I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyhow. Tell us about your typical day and what you do.
Yeah, I'm sure the answer you get is there's not a typical day.
Exactly.
But I mean, when I come in, so I have a big whiteboard in my office, and on my whiteboard are kind of my filters and how I like to take on projects or really go through my day. And the highlights of those filters are people, process, and property. And my goal every day is to impact those areas to the best of my ability. And in some days, I could be in meetings all day. And it's just going from one meeting to another, whether they're on the phone, whether they're in my office, whether they're in a conference room. And really, it's just trying to remember where I'm supposed to be next. But I also, two other things that I put on my calendar and I stick to the best of my ability is I allow myself during the week development time. So whatever that looks like, and that could be development of projects or development of myself. And so every week on my calendar, and it's on different days because sometimes it just doesn't work saying, okay, from 2 to 3 on Tuesdays work best for that. But you have to take time for yourself. And if you're not going to dedicate the time on your calendar, you'll never get to it. The second thing that I have on my calendar, which I believe a lot of individuals do, is dedicated time for my team. And there's a couple of ways I do that. One, we always have a weekly meeting to go over our calendars every Monday morning. So that way I can understand where they're going. And then I can also assist if I need to remove any barriers. So if something's coming up, they have a meeting later in the week that they're like, hey, leading up to this, I might need your help. At least I'm prepared, and then I can adjust. But then I know I have daily chats with them where it's more informal. I bounce in, hey, how's it going? But generally, even through those conversations, something will pop up. Oh, I had a phone call with so-and-so. And then we have a general conversation. But then I meet them every 2 weeks. And during those meetings, they run the agenda. I don't run the agenda. They come to me with their agenda. And they allow me to be a part of what they're doing. And then I make suggestions or if there's anything I can do to help. And then I do the quarterly meetings with them. And we talk about the goals that we set at the beginning of the year. And all of those touch points allow me to stay engaged with them without having to hunt them down and say, okay, what are you doing today? Because then my leader will ask me questions about, okay, so how are things going? What are those things that you're working on? So even though it's a weird way of answering your question, those are the different things that I place in my day, knowing that it could go haywire in an instance. I could get a call from a park and that interrupts the rest of my time because I spent an hour with them trying to work through something. But that's what my role is. In my role, it's more strategic, it's more support oriented, and I need to make myself available for that. So I tell my team, I was like, we're not mission critical. The parks are going to still open whether we show up in the office or not that day. But we want to be available to them when they need us. And so that's where my days look like. They're very flexible. I'm usually in the office between 7 and 7:15. Some days I'm out of the office by 3. Some days I'm out of the office by 8 o'clock. So it just depends on what's going on. I try to help the East Coast parks as much as the West Coast parks who are on a different time zone. You get an email or a phone call on a Saturday and Sunday. You take it and say, okay, how can I help you? And I think, again, going back to the filters of people, process, and property, if I'm impacting those with whatever I have scheduled in my day, I'm doing something right.
So, Richard, let me ask you this question, and this is kind of off of the agenda.
Yep.
And I realize that when you worked for Disney and Epcot, you weren't in the same position or same role that you're in now.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of something I've thought. How much more difficult is it to run your current operation as it relates to employees as it would be if it were, say, Disney, which is 24/7?
Yeah.
You know, so they're not, I mean, I'm sure they they have seasons.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they hire seasonal people, but they're open. They don't close.
Yeah.
I mean, they're open on Christmas Day, aren't they?
Yep. Oh, yeah. They're open 365 every day.
Yes. So would you, since you've been in both of them, would you say that where you're at now is more difficult to staff than, say, Disney would be?
Oh, definitely more difficult to staff. Yeah. I mean, the challenges are obviously different. I remember when I was with Disney and I was in the entertainment world, we would help out on interviews for training, but for performers, we would do auditions. So it's a little different, but we would do those. Right. We would do those every week. And we're bringing in people because we know that we're going to need that for a new stage show that's going in or a parade. So there might be pockets at Disney where those can be just as challenging as what we have. But overall, from a staffing standpoint, totally much more challenging where we're at because it's just an ever-evolving climate. So you have to look at
Right.
the socioeconomics around it. Like I said earlier, unemployment rate is really down. If you're looking at some of our markets, the minimum wage is going up. So we have to continue to be competitive in those areas, and
Right.
we want to be seen in those markets as being ahead of the curve, or do you want to be keeping up with the times? And then are people moving into those areas, or are people moving out of those areas? Like Charlotte is a booming city. So
Right.
for Carowinds, it's a little bit different than it is in Shakopee, Minnesota, where it's very difficult to get individuals to come from Minneapolis to come down.
Right.
If you read Amazon's headquarter search for their second headquarter, they were
Correct.
They were in the market at Minneapolis, and then they got knocked out because it's just so hard to hire people in Minneapolis for the tech roles that they're looking for. We're seeing the same thing, but we're just seeing it as a seasonal level.
Right.
So each of the markets play a little differently. So we even have to look at money allocation from a budget standpoint, where we're allocating it for each of the parks. It might look a little different because it's just a unique challenge at each of those parks, where Disney has the name, so people are going to want to work there. But I remember when I was starting out, it was a challenge to get into Disney. And I'm not saying that it's not now, but I'm sure that because of the economy, they may be really hedging bets on getting individuals to come in and say, okay, how can I make sure that I'm marketing myself appropriately and bringing in the right talent, because I need to now open, let's say, a new resort, or we're opening a new attraction. And I mean, when they open up Star Wars at the studios, that's a big deal. That's going to take a lot of people to operate.
Yeah.
So are they preparing for that now, and they're just moving individuals from one place to another, and then they'll supplement them later based on when they open? Because they're, like you said, they do hire seasonals, they hire part-times and full-times during different time of the year. So it's just a ramp up during certain times, where we kind of ramp up at the beginning of the year and we keep going until June, and then we could take a deep breath, and then we're getting ready into the Halloween season.
Right. Well, I'm not too familiar with Anaheim. I've got clients in Anaheim, but Orlando is explosion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. The outskirts of Orlando are just the new homes that are being built, the businesses that are being built. It's just ridiculous. So I would have to think that it would be similarly difficult there to find any employee for anything.
Absolutely.
Really,
I mean,
at this point.
them and Lockheed Martin. I mean, if you're looking just at the Central Florida area, those are two huge employers, and there are only two of them. So if you think of, like you said, the expansion beyond that, the hotels that are not associated with those areas, the other theme parks that are in that area, food and beverage, just general business to business. I mean, it is huge, the amount of people it takes to run the things that are in the Central Florida area.
Yeah, it's nuts. But I would agree with you. Your situation has got to be more difficult, not just because of seasonality, but also all the different markets you're dealing with too. So
yeah,
I would agree. All right, I've got one more question for you.
All right.
This is not for me. This is for someone who's either listening to this or watching this or whatever, and they're new into HR, or they're considering getting into HR, any branch, any position in HR. What words of wisdom would you give them to help them be successful?
I think I mentioned it earlier a little bit. There are a couple of things I would say. One, it's called human resources. So even though there's a lot of policy and procedures and things that may not even be within your control, within, let's say, employment law, different states and things like that, it's still the human element. We're dealing with humans. Right. Even they may have an employee number, you got to get them that paycheck, you do those things. We're still working with humans. And those individuals have lives outside of their employment, but we know that they spend a majority of their time with us as an employer. So don't forget that element when you're trying to work through things. But human resource is also a huge business. And by that, there are a lot of different functionalities within human resources that you can get accustomed to. Like I came up through training. My talent acquisition person has been a recruiter the whole time. So there are specialists within the HR world, and then there are generalists. Try to be both. Try to find where your area of opportunity lies, where you may have to start off as a generalist and then just say, where am I going to provide the most value and the most impact, and I'm going to enjoy doing it. And it's that piece that has always continued to motivate me is, am I having fun and am I making an impact? Every job that I've gone to, I've had that conversation. Every interview that I've conducted with individuals that are either going to be working with me or working on a team, I explain to them the impact that they're going to make. And in some cases, I have specifics. In some cases, I don't. So when I hired my 2 individuals, I told them, hey, there's a new onboarding leadership program that I need you to create in the next 4 months. And from a talent acquisition, much like I said earlier, we're going to be rolling out a new employer brand, a new career website, and a new applicant tracking system as soon as you get started. So those are specifics, but that's immediate impact. And when you can communicate that, some people will go, well, I'm not signing up for that. And others will jump at that opportunity. And not to say that either one is good or bad, but it at least allows them to evaluate. Because I think so often when we get individuals within the organizations, we haven't set expectations right, and we haven't been able to address what role they play in making an impact to the organization. If we can do that up front, that's great. And if you can do that as you're getting ready to jump into a career, whether it's a career in HR or a career somewhere else, and you can do that self-reflection, what do I like doing and what do I want to make an impact doing? That will help you figure out if HR is the right thing for you, or what in HR is the thing that you want to do the most.
Exactly. Great words of wisdom. Very much so. If you aren't having fun, you shouldn't be there.
Yep.
I had a gentleman tell me once, I can't tell you how many jobs I had before I got into hospitality. I guess they're blaming millennials for that, and like we never did that. But I mean, literally, I must have had at least 25 or 30 jobs before I got into hospitality, at least.
Yeah.
And I had a guy tell me once, apparently I didn't look like I was happy at work. And he said, if you're not having fun, son, you need to go home.
Yeah.
And I looked up at him and said, you know what? You're right. And that's exactly what I did. I went home and I didn't go back, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I mean, that's great advice. And then adding, am I making an impact?
Yeah.
Or what do I want to make? How do I want to make my impact?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can live your life by those 2 things.
Exactly. I mean, if you go into any interview thinking, okay, I have the framework of what this job is, but hey, here's what I bring to the table and how I'm going to make an impact. You're going to be able to sell yourself on, okay, first of all, do I believe that you're going to be able to make that impact? And if so, it's an easier sell. And I can jump on that bandwagon and say, yeah, absolutely, come on in and make an impact. And if we as employers start doing that and say, here are the expectations, but here's how you're going to make an impact, it does help you determine if that person looked scared and was like, whoa, that seems like a lot, or determined to they're picking the right person. And I tell people all the time, I was like, I had the best job. I get to do a lot of great things, but all of my jobs have been the best jobs. I've learned a lot from different individuals. I've learned a lot from different leaders. I've learned a lot from the work that I did. And it is still work, but it still should be enjoyable. And if you can make it enjoyable, then you're gonna have a long, successful career.
That's what will make it successful for sure. Richard, thank you so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
For taking time out of your day to share with us. This has been awesome. I take notes the whole time, so I have like a page of notes. That I was not paying attention if my head was down. I was writing. Again, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this episode. Those of you who are watching maybe for the first time, hit the subscribe button, and we will let you know when we produce another episode. And I'll just say have a great day and bye for now.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Please feel free to contact Randy with any questions about team building or employee engagement issues. Subscribe to this channel so you'll be notified when new episodes are published.